Welcome to Wellness Made Easy with Wendy and Kirsten. Hi, I'm Wendy. After I graduated with my master's in wellness management, I started my own company, T2 Coaching, Health, Fitness, and Sport. And I'm Kirsten, an athlete, vegan, life coach, and girl mom, running a business focused on helping others create a life they love. We are here to explore all things wellness to help you become the person you've always wanted to be. So if that's why you're here, open your ears and your mind as we tackle the world of wellness together. Hey, everybody. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Kirsten. How are you?
I'm doing better now. It's been a crazy week because it's school's out, but chorus camp hasn't started yet, and my mom is out of town. So all week I've been trying to do my normal week, but with the 6-year-old in tow. So it's been challenging. And right before I thought she was going to be here, which means she would be coming in here every 2 seconds wanting to be on the video, and which is fine.
I wonder why.
I know.
Her mom takes selfies of her since she was born.
I know. She loves it. And whenever I'm doing like my videos, she's always jumping in, which I was actually planning for that to happen because I thought I was going to have her for a few more hours today. It's her dad's day to have her, but he works during the day too. So he messaged me about a half an hour ago and said, I can come pick her up. I was like, yes, it's just less distractions. I have a hard time focusing anyway, as you guys all know. So now I'm off duty for the rest of the day so I can actually go get a workout in, because that's what I have been missing with my busy starting swim team in the mornings, because I usually work out mid-morning, but we practice every day until 10:30. And then I have to get on with my like real life stuff. And so I actually have, and then I did go swimming yesterday, but I went to Masters yesterday at noon, but it was canceled because of lightning. So
was the pool closed?
Yeah, I went to Scott Carpenter and I got in, and
because it was outside.
Yeah. So I usually meet my friend Kat for long course at Scott Carpenter every Wednesday afternoon, but we've been getting lightninged out. And so she messaged me in the morning and she's like, I'm bailing. I'm sick of it being cold because it's been like 50s and cloudy here, which is normally nice. But if you want to swim outside in the sun and enjoy that, it's like, you're like, ugh. And the last 2 weeks we've swam, halfway through our swim, there's a storm rolling in. And so they closed the pool. So she was like, I'm not even going to do it. So I was like, okay. And the time we're there, they have a Boulder Masters program there. And so I have like 5 punches still on my punch card for Masters. So I'm like, I'm just going to go do Masters because I haven't done it in a while. And I get there and the cloud, it was sunny when I left my house. It's like a 20-minute drive. I get there, the clouds are rolling in. I was like, oh, crossing my fingers. I swam 100. So I actually got in, got wet, swam 100. They blew the whistle for the lightning. I was like, I'm just going home and getting stuff done. So I was actually really productive. I took a hour-and-a-half nap.
Wow.
Which was my big productivity. And I forgot to close my daughter's door, and the hamster, Belle barks at the hamster. So you tell us how you're doing. I'm just going to go close the door.
So what you reminded me of is the reason I asked if the pool is closed is our indoor pools, like the Y's or the local smaller pool venues, close with lightning, even though they're indoors. And I asked about the pool that I work at Lifetime Fitness in Woodstock, and we're grounded, so we don't need to close the indoor pool when it's lightning, just the outdoor pool when it's lightning. And then your story also reminded me of all the cancellations of the Boulder Stroke and Strides that happen on Thursday nights.
I know.
You wait all day to do your run and swim, and then half of them or more or less, I don't know, but let's just say half of them throughout the summer, at least the swims are canceled due to lightning. And again, you can't control that. What can you do? But again, you wait all day. Those things, start at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You go there early, you do registration, you socialize, you set up your transition to go from the swim to the run, and bam, it's canceled. But at least more often than not, you're able to get those runs in.
Yeah, I've done, I can't even remember a time where they canceled the run, but a lot of people choose not to do the run because they wanted to run swim. If you do the run, you don't get to transfer your entry into the next week. But we have run, one time there was like 10 people because people are like, I'm not running. It was so windy that the res was like swishing the water up and over the dam.
Oh, nice.
So like you ran, it was like a tidal wave to the side. So
Nice.
there was only like 10 of us. But yeah, I don't think they've ever canceled the run. Even if there's lightning, I think as long as, I guess it's your choice if you want to run with the lightning.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have to close our indoor pools the same as you, that it's lifetime. But I have twice gone to the outdoor pool and there's been a storm rolling in and there's lightning. So this is just the time of year where in Colorado, it's kind of iffy because there's like every day this week, a storm's rolled in, and there, even my swim practice this morning, right when we got out at 10:30, we were leaving and those dark clouds were rolling in. So
Yeah, we've had some epic storms. Like it's rained every day, probably the last 7 days at least rain. Today it was raining while I was coaching the kids, but I looked, their lightning was like 200 miles away. So there was no lightning close by. We just swam in the rain. Thought it was going to sprinkle like for 15 minutes, but it started around 7:45. So right before the kids were getting there, we start practice at 8. So I swam a little bit before they got there and I'm like, oh, things are fine. And we swam the whole time and it rained the whole time. I got out at 9. I swam with them for an hour and then I got out at 9 because I'm like, I'm going to be wet. I might as well swim with them, you know?
okay.
And
It's
they
probably
don't,
warmer in
they
the
like
water.
swim. Yeah. And the summer when I swim with them, I finally get in shape in the water because I don't swim much until now because we're 40 meters. We're kind of long course and it's outside. So I swam with them till 9 and I'm like, oh my God, it's still raining, but it was a light drizzle. And then I was fine. Just I had my parka on. I was warm, was prepared. And, you know, it's been like 60s here. That's really cold for Georgia in May and approaching June. It's been really cool. But like we had that heat wave about a week ago and then it really cooled off.
Right.
So it rained. And then we had maybe I got home at 10, almost 10:30. I think it stopped for like 15 minutes. And then it's just been a light drizzle all day. This is when like you get floods because, oh, it's a light drizzle. You don't realize it's raining, but it's been doing this, you know, we've had epic storms where the power's been going off, like thunder, lightning, like scary stuff over the last few days. No tornadoes, but it always seems like tornado-ish.
Right.
So, yeah, it's been strange weather for May here in Georgia. Just with the volume of rain and storms, that usually more of those storms usually happen more in that February, March,
Right.
but not like in May. You know, it does rain, but not as much as it has been. So save on water. You don't have to water the plants.
Right. Yeah, ours is pretty standard for Colorado in the spring.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky because my summer swim team that we practice on a golf course, and they have this really fancy system that if the lightning is a certain distance that's unsafe, it has a siren. So it sounds its own alarm. So we don't have to check the weather apps. We don't have to look out for lightning. We just swim until a big siren tells us we have to get out, and then it tells us when it's safe to get back in.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, well, what's your wellness win for the week?
Well, I think it happened today. So today I had, you know, I woke up early. Don and I are out of bed by 5, but I'm usually up by 4. And then I try to get some training in, and I haven't been training much the last few days because just the change of schedule, and I've been tired. So I've been like, I don't really want to train. I'm kind of tired. So today though, like for 4 days, I was kind of had some anxiety because today was going to be a start at 5 a.m. back to back to back to back to back until we do the podcast. And then when we're done with the podcast, I get on with my normal, you know, work day.
Right.
And my 10:30 appointment canceled. So I coached swimming. I was going to go meet this new guy at the track. This is the second time he canceled, but he canceled due to weather. And I'm like, well, you come to Lifetime. We'll do our assessment on the treadmill. It's okay. We can still meet indoors. And I'm like, it's drizzle, no big deal. But for whatever reason, he wanted to cancel. So all of a sudden from 10:30 to 12,
we're like,
I got to go home. And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm fine with him canceling because I really wanted just a little bit, an hour and a half downtime before my 12 o'clock happened. Yeah. And then I had a 1 o'clock, online 12 o'clock and a 1 o'clock. So I'm kind of like, I felt good.
Yeah.
And so now after the podcast, when we're done, I don't have to go coach the kids because I coached them this morning. So I get to stay home, which is even better.
That's the best.
So normally I have a big training day in the mornings, and it's still usually a busy morning, but at least I have a big training day. And now my training times in the mornings, just like yours, have gotten shorter or non-existent. I have to juggle and restructure my days. And this is the first week, as you know, kind of a little bit of restructuring and kind of getting on the new schedule. And we talked about that in the last podcast about transitioning and different schedules and adapting. And I think I've done pretty well because I prepared to be a little bit more overwhelmed today. Like I was preparing for it. And when it was happening, I'm like, oh, I'm already ready. I'm already done some things ahead of time. So I wouldn't be thinking about them when I was meeting this guy at the track. So it all worked out pretty well.
That's awesome.
So I think that was my biggest wellness win because again, it had to do with a stress and anxiety reduction that happened to me. And then I think another, just a little minor wellness win. I always like to talk about my sport. I ran a 10K Monday and I haven't done it since 2023 and I had high expectations and I was 5 minutes slower than I was in 2022. And I was like, interesting. Because I literally, I ran 2 miles very strong and then I just had nothing.
Yeah.
Depleted. Like I should have ate more last night or I should have maybe rested. I thought I was a little rested the last couple days leading up to the race, but I wasn't.
Right.
So I finished and I'm like, whatever, what a learning opportunity. And it's kind of like, well, I still got, third overall. It was a small race. Not many people showed up. I should have won, but I still got third overall. And I'm like, okay, take that as a win. The girls that beat me were 14 and 23 years old. I'm 56. Right. So I turned that, I went into this the wrong way. I have another 10K coming up. I'm going to go into it a little more in a rested state because I really want to knock it out of the park. And these youngins beat me. Who cares? And so it's like I turned this whatever, I'm not going to say it was purely negative situation, but I turned a time 5 minutes slower, which I wasn't expecting to be 5 minutes slower. I thought maybe 2 minutes slower, but not 5, into a whatever learning experience. You still got to run a 10K, learned you're tired, you need some rest. And you still got third overall.
I know. Well, I think that's great. That is great because to go in, because you did that really fast 5K, you were like pumped up to see where you were at with this 10K. And the good news is you did this 10K to see where you're at for the Labor Day 10K, or wait,
for the
4th of July.
For the 4th of July, Peachtree.
Yeah.
10K is really where I really want to more or less knock it out of the park. Yeah. And so I have another one. I have a flat one on June 7th. So that one I want to knock it out of the park because it's my team sponsor, Fleet Feet Canton, is hosting it. And that was like my comeback 5K. That was my first, I did that. I walked that 5K 10 weeks post patella surgery in an hour and 17 minutes. And then the next year I ran it and I won it running it in like 21 and some change. I did really well. And so this year I'm going to do the 10K. They added a 10K and I'm like, all right, I already won it. I'm going to do the 10K, something new. And I want to knock it out of the park.
Right. Well, and that's good because now you have this one last weekend under your belt and you're like, oh, I didn't quite do what I wanted. So now I can make these changes.
I'm going to make these changes. And that's why it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I've learned over the years from my experiences how to the proper attitude to have after a race and to understand what went wrong. I totally understand what went wrong. And so that thrives me. That makes me want to do more because I'm like, I didn't hit it, but I think I know why. So I'm going to make these changes, try it again and be like, ooh, did it work? Did all these changes work?
Right. And also just spinning it into something positive. Like you said, I got third overall. Like on my quote, bad day, I got third overall.
And a 14 and 23-year-old are the only ones that beat me.
Exactly. That's what when I got second in St. George, because I mean, again, I got second in my age group. I'm not going to complain. That's really awesome. But I wanted first. So then I was like, well, I was the first American because the girl who beat me was from Germany.
Uh-huh.
So I just like spun it to like, I could be like, oh, I got second or I got first American.
But you really got first loser in your age.
I was the first place loser.
You're the first place
runner up.
I was the second place loser.
Then it gets to a lot. I was the 5th place loser after the runner up of the second place loser.
Yes.
Spin it however you want. Make it work for you.
Yeah.
So my wellness one is actually, I think, similar to what yours first one was. And it's because I've had the same exact week as you. It's like I said, it's kind of that in between time. And normally my mom steps in and helps out a lot when Cora's out of school, and I'm trying to just continue all my work things that are all over the place. Right now I'm working at 4 different gyms, or pools. And it's just a lot of running around. It's a lot of, when I have Cora, it's fine. Most of the places have kid care, but that takes an extra 10 minutes to check her in, check her out, get her in her car seat, make sure she has food, make sure I have food. So it's just been kind of crazy. And so I haven't been able to work out hardly at all. And not that I'm kind of in an in between. Like, I was taking these last 2 weeks to just do whatever I can fit in for training, because I want to start doing some speed work, because Boulder Peak is in like 2 months or like 6 weeks or something. And I really want to do well in that. So I am going to start doing some shorter, faster things, but I knew this would be a transition week, and I knew last week would be as well. And so I've hardly worked out at all. And normally I would be a little more freaked out about it, not from a training standpoint, because I know time off is good. And I know once I start training, I'll be fine. But from a mental standpoint, in that I use movement as my therapy and to calm my anxiety, to reduce overwhelm. And I haven't had that. And so that, coupled with a really stressful, overwhelming, busy week, typically for me in the past has been a recipe for disaster, as far as either mental breakdowns or stuffing my face with a lot of junk food.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, compared to how I used to be, I've handled everything really well from an emotional standpoint, and only half eaten crappy food and only half freaked out about it. So for me, that's a total wellness win.
Well, and again, I think you knew you were taking some 2 weeks of downtime. You knew it was an overwhelming time of year. You knew it was temporary. So you planned for it. You knew what was potentially going to happen based on previous experiences, and you know it's temporary.
Yeah. And we talked about that a lot last week, is that it was a big like aha, that I was like, oh wait, I knew May was going to be crazy. So if you know it's going to be crazy, it's easier to just go with the flow and allow it to be crazy.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're so wellness, Winnie.
Yes.
So Wendy and I this week, we've been doing this podcast now for 6 months. It's our 6-month podcast anniversary and our 24th episode. And after every episode, we're like, you guys, tell us what you think. Let us know your wellness wins. Let us know if you have questions. Let us know if you want to add to the topic that we're doing. And so we say that every time, and we love getting these questions. We typically answer you individually, but we kind of leave it at that. And then we're like, oh, wait, there's no real follow-up. And Wendy and I are really big on follow-up. We want to make sure you understand everything, that you get your questions answered, and that we hear you. And we love hearing your experiences, your stories, and how you relate to our topics that we choose. So what we decided to do for this it's kind of like a wrap up of the last 6 months. We are going to go through each of our episodes and just kind of answer maybe even just one question, or if there wasn't a question about that episode, maybe just mention like, here's some of the responses I got, or here's how I'm feeling about it. So that just kind of touch on each episode. So we're only going to do a couple minutes for each one. So it's not like a, 6-hour episode. But I know Wendy and I have each gotten several responses on the outset of each episode that we sometimes follow up with in another episode, but maybe not as specifically as we want to. So it's kind of like a wrap up, an overview, to make sure that we're not missing something that would potentially help you guys get to where you want to be in your life. Did that sum it up pretty well for you?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so I pulled up a list of our episodes. So I'm just going to say the title of our episode, like kind of a sentence about what it was about. And then Wendy has tons of questions. I only have 1 or 2 main things that I wanted to just add that I thought of afterward based on your guys' feedback to me. So our first episode is called Wellness Made Easy, A New Beginning. It was our very first episode. And in looking back at that, I just wanted to mention that It is our most watched episode, which is really happy. I'm really excited about that because that means like after somebody watches a further down episode, they came back to this one. And Wendy and I were all over the place with technical issues. Just like we were making fun of ourselves because it was such a, like a, we were both just, it was a mess. But I loved every second of it. And so I just wanted to mention that, I'm really glad we kicked it off. We weren't prepared. We were doing a practice episode. So
You know what? And we recorded that practice episode and we decided, let's just go with it. That was not our intention of that very first episode. Our intention wasn't that to make episode 1 of the Wellness Made Easy podcast. But since we kind of went spontaneous. We went with the flow. It was practice. It worked for us.
we're like, let's just do it.
Yeah, we learned from it. We learned from our experience.
We learned a lot from it. And I think we wanted to put it out because Wendy and I, if you listen to any or all of our episodes, we talk a lot about like transparency and be yourself and vulnerability. And this is who you are. This is who I am. And just put it out there and do, and then learn from it. Try something. If it doesn't work, oh well. And that's why we just wanted to kind of share that that's our mindset. And that's the mindset we teach our athletes. Just try that 5K. I remember this reminded me, I was training this athlete and she was trying to PR her half marathon. And she had done several half marathons. And there's a lot of different ways you can run a half marathon. But it was just for fun. It was a training run for her. So this is what I said. Go out as hard as you can and just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And she said for 5 miles, she like went as hard as she can. And then she, in her words, died the last 8 miles. But she still PR'd.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That reminds me when I met Don, maybe the first year we started dating, 99. Maybe he ran that half marathon in 2000, but very early on in our relationship, I told him, go watchless. And so I believe it was a half marathon. I believe he wore the watch, just didn't look at it at all. So he just went by.
So you could collect the data.
But he collected the data, didn't look at the watch once. He ran his PR.
Yeah.
He ran a PR just by going by feel. It's so important to go by feel.
Go by feel. All right. So episode number 2, the power of a word transforming your year.
So our word that you chose was our word delight. And one of the questions I've had is, how can we bring the word delight into a hard training session or boring routine? I think that's a great question. And again, a lot of our questions do have to do with someone's sport. And so, delight, look at the word, the actual definition of the word delight. It brings you joy. It brings you happiness. It goes back to when you're struggling in a workout or when a workout's boring, remember your why. It always goes back to the why are you doing it? And there's got to be a why, because if you don't have a strong why, then don't do it. If you really aren't having delight, joy in any type of thing that you're doing, and you have the ability to control yourself doing it or not doing it, it's okay to not do it. Save it for another day. Stop, reflect. Maybe you might, again, in the specific workout, you may stop doing it. But then you may be like, why did I stop? There's no reason I needed to stop. I'm got this big why. I'm going to get back on the bike or go whatever you're doing. I'm going to continue it. And so usually not going through with the intended workout in this example may help you recognize what the intention was and that you're going to follow through on what you committed to doing.
Yeah. And I also want to add, the word delight, like you said, like just the way it sounds, delight. It sounds like fresh and fun and playful. And sometimes that's all you need to add to your workouts. If your workouts feel boring, if your training feels boring, some people do that by grabbing a partner, bringing a friend, doing a walk and talk, I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow. Somebody hooked us up online. She's plant-based athlete, and she wants to be better at her sport with her nutrition. And so we're meeting at the gym and we're just hanging out and doing a workout and talking about plant-based athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be fun for us because it's something we're both passionate about. It's more of like she wants to learn from me, which is fine, because that's why I say let's do it at gym, because then I'm going to like get some sort of workout along the way.
Yeah.
Delight. All right. Number 3 was embracing possibility, the new year and beyond. So kind of, but we were talking about New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. So New Year's resolutions, we talked a little bit about what our New Year's resolutions are. We talked a little bit about decluttering our body and mind and space in that episode. So again, I didn't have a specific question based on that.
I don't have a specific question, but I do have something that people mention all the time about it that I think is worth mentioning again, is I do Toss It Tuesday. And every time I throw out Toss It Tuesday, mention Toss It Tuesday, people are like, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. So if you're struggling with overwhelm, if you're struggling with clutter, if you're struggling with too much on your schedule, and we actually said this last week, the best thing to do is less. Do less, have less, get rid of things, get rid of space, get rid of people in your life that bring you down. I just went through and deleted like 300 old photos the other day. And I know it's only 300 out of my 12,000 or something ridiculous. But if I'm trying to find a photo, that's 300 less I have to scroll through.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a difference. So even if it's little, get rid of something little, even if it's trash.
Well, here's a question. What's one thing that you thought was impossible that you ended up doing? I don't think I've ever really recognized myself saying that's impossible, like especially like my youth summers that I coach do. I've never really thought anything's impossible, but I do know in 1997, before my very first Ironman, first marathon, the fear of the unknown. I'd never run more than 16 miles, let alone after swimming 2.4 and riding 112. I'd swam plenty of times 2.4 miles. I'd ridden 112, probably up to 120 miles in training before that Ironman, but I'd never run more than 16 miles. So I never thought it was I knew it was possible. I just didn't know what would happen to my body.
Right.
Like, I just assumed when people run a marathon, I just assumed everyone bonks at mile 20. Everyone hits the wall, because that's all you read about is bonking and hitting the wall. So I just assumed that was going to happen to me. So that was always in my like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me after mile 16? I mean, I literally had that, what's going to happen to me after mile 20? Like, I don't know. And so getting to those points in that race, I'm like, all right, I'm past mile 16 and I'm still the same person. I'm still running the same pace. I'm still feeling the same way. And then at mile 20, when you get out again, that energy lab, the famous energy lab, I'm like, all right, I'm going to hit the wall. And I'm like, mile 21, I'm like, oh, where's the wall? I didn't hit any wall, and I attribute that to my 100% focus was on fueling. That race, I really didn't know much about fueling. I asked a friend of mine what she did, and I kind of followed her protocol, and I learned that 2 days before the race. So like I was so focused on drinking, and eating. And obviously that's why I had such a successful marathon, but I didn't know it at the time that was why.
Right.
Like now I know you've just fueled so well that really impacted that overall marathon result. So I never really had anything that I thought was impossible that I ended up doing. How about you?
I don't think I have either, but that what you're saying in this question reminds me of when people are beginning. So I coach a lot of beginner athletes. And when you're beginning, a lot of times you don't know what your body can do. And the only way to know is to keep trying and pushing and expanding that comfort zone of your body, just like we do with our mind. And that reminded me of with some of my kids who are new to swimming. If you tell one of those kids, or if you're new to a 5K, go out and swim at 25 as fast as you can. And I clock them and they're like, oh my God, I could never swim any faster. And let's say it's 20 seconds. And I have them take a nice long rest and do it again. And then the next time they do 18 seconds. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so hard. I can't go any faster than that. And then the next time it's like 16 seconds. And they're like, how am I going faster? Because you have that experience that like you just said, I now know I can go faster and I'm not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I now know I can go faster and I can recover or stop if I need to. I now know that. And the experience I had with some of my, actually, I have one guy in mind. I started coaching him a few years ago for running. And I was like, what's keeping you from going faster? Because I want to know, is it your legs? Are they like bricks? Are they heavy? Is it your heart rate is too high? Is it, I don't know how to move my legs faster? Is it, whatever, what is keeping you from going faster? And he said, my heart rate's getting too high. And I said, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, how high is your effort? And he was like, probably like a 6. And I'm like, so to me, like, I had to slow down because my heart rate's too high, but I'm only running at a 6 out of 10. That doesn't match up. So I asked more questions, and he was looking at his heart rate, and he had read or computed it for the average human where his max heart rate is. And he was getting too close to that, and it was freaking him out.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you guys know, if you have a heart condition or your doctor tells you not to go over heart rate, that's not what we're saying. This is someone, he has no heart issues. He was just thinking, my heart rate's supposed to be, let's say 160 is his max. And it was getting up to 160. So he would slow down, freaking out because I don't know, does my heart explode when it gets past my max?
Mm-hmm.
Like what happens if I go past my max? But if your effort is only 6 out of 10, you're nowhere near your max.
And I love that example because I hear all the time, especially when athletes are hitting a hill in an event on the bike or the run, they're like, I walked. I'm like, why did you walk? Because my heart rate got too high. And I said, okay, what was your running effort? Well, I was only running at like a 5 out of 10 up the hill. I'm like, well, then why did you walk? Well, my heart rate was getting too high. And it's like, okay, all the factors that impact your heart rate, especially if you are doing a 70.3 or 140.6 or a marathon or a half marathon, the heat, nutrition, dehydration, fatigue. There's so many things that are going to make your heart rate higher at a given effort. That
race anxiety.
Race anxiety, that is just so or if you had caffeine in your gels or caffeine in the race, it's all going to impact your heart rate. So it's so important to recognize your heart rate's high, but to really recognize this is a race. And again, if you don't have any health concerns, you should race. You had a lot more effort in you to not have to walk that hill if your effort up the hill was only a 5. Now, if your effort up the hill, you were maxed out and your heart rate was maxed out and you were like burning matches too quickly, well, then you need to slow down. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to walk, but if walking was the best option, it's a different scenario if you're maxing out at a 10 versus a rate of perceived effort of a 5.
Yeah. Or if you have like your calves feel like they're about to start cramping and you're like, oh God, if I run, cause like I know running uphill and walking uphill is different muscles being used.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're on the verge of like calf cramps or something like that, or even a side stitch, like that's something, if you go over the edge on a side stitch, sometimes it's hard to pedal backwards. But yeah, that's why rate of perceived effort, you guys learn your rate of perceived effort. Data is great. Look at your watch. That's great. But rate of perceived effort is going to dictate how you as an individual can perform.
Excellent point.
All right, next one. Oh, this was a big one. Navigating nutrition, keep it simple. So we went over some very simple nutritional things. And the only one that I want to recap, because people still ask me all the time, is with protein, whether you're vegan or not, because we get a lot of questions about protein as vegans. Before you decide you're not getting enough protein, or you need more protein, or you need different sources of protein, you need to figure out how much protein you're getting, how much you need, and where it's coming from. And it'll kind of solve itself.
Right. And then we also highlighted whole food nutrition versus processed foods. Processed foods are usually anything that comes in a grocery store in the aisle. Usually that's all processed foods, and anything around the perimeter is more whole foods, lean proteins, fish, chicken, meat, vegetables, fruits, whole grains are usually around the perimeter of the store. Now, a question I got, again, it's a common question that we get as coaches from athletes is based on nutrition. How do you fuel long training days when you have a sensitive stomach? Power bar products lead to dry mouth, and gels cause me GI distress. And I followed up with this athlete, and just to get a feel of what types of gels and bars he was eating. And this athlete just assumed you have to eat the typical energy product like, again, back in the day, I started with power bars and I moved on to Cliff bars and then all sorts of bars. I started with goo as my type of gel. And then I went to power gels and various other gels, Cliff gels. And then there's shot blocks. And that's an easy way to consume fuel. And I always note, always try what's offered on the course at your race so you can rely on that. But ultimately, what you eat doesn't have to be a processed bar or a processed sugary product like a gel. You can make your own gels. You can have honey. Honey's like a gel. The consistency of it's okay. What I used to eat was Larry and Lenny's vegan cookies. These big 400-calorie cookies. I would cut them into fours. It was like that was my power bar of choice, even though it wasn't the traditional power bar, but it was like a power bar. So ultimately, you got to find what works for you. You got to find out how much you can tolerate as far as number of calories or number of grams of carbohydrates. Usually it's in that 60 to 90 grams or 200 to 300 calorie range, and eat what you want to eat what you enjoy. I used to suck on a lot of candy too. So use liquid calories. There's just so many different options. It doesn't have to be the traditional power products, energy products that you see most athletes using in training.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who do like boiled potatoes, or you like boiled potatoes, you mash them up, you can put some salt on there, you can put some butter on there and a little squeezy packet and suck down some potatoes. People are like, oh, all those sweet things just like bother my stomach. So something basic like a potato or a sweet potato,
Applesauce.
dates. What was that?
Applesauce.
Oh, and now they make, speaking of applesauce, like back when we were kids, back when we were first starting, they didn't have, now they have those fruit and veggie pouches.
Yeah, it's like a gel.
It's just like a gel, but it's not going to be as gooey and sweet and like it should be easily digestible because it's all just pureed fruits and vegetables. It's actually really healthy too. But I would say you guys, especially if you're starting, you're really lucky these days because now there's so many different options of liquids and gels that are a lot more gentle on your stomach. Like I just started using Flow, and it's like, find something that says like gentle on the gut. And I increased my calories, increased my carbs, and had no gut issues in my last race. And that was the first time I raced that distance with those products. So there's a lot of products nowadays that they're more scientific. They're more geared toward people with GI distress. So I think that that's a good place to start as well. All right. Stress and anxiety. I think we talk about this during every podcast.
I do too. The things we highlight in every podcast also with stress and anxiety are sleep. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Usually when you have stress and anxiety, you're probably lacking sleep or you're lacking in nutrients. Your diet went to hell and you started eating too much processed foods. That's going to cause stress and anxiety. So we always stress the importance of sleep and nutrition. And then when it comes to stress and anxiety, identifying the cause. If you can't, talk to someone, whether it's like a therapist or a friend that you trust and can really talk to, who's really listening to you, will be very helpful.
Yes, agree with all of that. And again, we talk about it in every podcast. So if you want more on stress and anxiety, come to our next podcast.
Right. And again, just the one quick question again from an athlete. I didn't get this specifically from this podcast, but I've had it over and over and again. I just want to highlight another podcast is what do you do during taper week when your anxiety spikes and your brain says you're not ready? That leads into imposter syndrome. And we did a whole episode on athletes pre, during, and post race. That would be great for this athlete to reference for that question.
Yes, for sure, you guys. And I feel like every few weeks, either Wendy or I are tapering for something or building for something or doing something that we kind of mention in our wellness wins.
Yeah.
So listen for those as well. All right. The next one is the one that I only have one question I wanted to go over, and it's for this one. So our next podcast was on periodization in training and in life, and how to periodize your training so that it fits in with your life and what periodization even is. And the reason I wanted to mention my athlete I'm working with right now, that this is what we're going through today, is our text back and forth all day. She had me build her out a strength program a couple months ago. She's done it maybe twice in the last couple months. When she came to me, she said, I want to do strength training 3 days a week. I want to get stronger, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, I just am not doing it. I don't know what's going on with me. I just am not motivated, blah, blah, blah. So I ask a bunch of questions, just like Wendy and I always talk about. And what it boiled down to, what her answers were telling me is that she's been racing pretty much for a year. She has not taken any downtime, any off season, and she travels internationally for several of her races. So she comes back from a race, and then she has another race coming up in a month or so that typically is out of the country, or at least out of the state. It's a lot of championship races. So they're high intensity, high anxiety, and she has not taken any time off. And she still has a race in June, and she still has a race in July. So what I told her, and what I do for myself also, if it's kind of like life. When you start getting really overwhelmed, if you know you have something coming up that you're going to commit to, so she's going to commit to her June and July races, that'll be a full year of racing with no breaks. You have a couple options. You can cancel some of the races or decide not to do them, like Wendy and I have both done in the past. We've talked about on different podcasts. Or you can say, I have 2 more months of racing. I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to work hard for my 2 months. I'm going to do all the things I need to do. I'm going to take care of myself and go out, crush my races, knowing that there's an end in sight. And then I'm going to make it a priority to stop, rest, and do something different for a few months.
I love that. And it kind of leads into what I wanted to discuss as far as like periodization, like a training plan, where you usually kind of build over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. And then you incorporate that rest into your training, maybe every 3rd or 4th week. It's just a decrease in training load. And I think athletes, myself included, sometimes have a hard time with that. Like for me, when I'm not really preparing for a race, I don't really periodize my plan. I just train and I rest when I need to. Like this week, I really need to. And I'm like, dang it, I should have took more rest last week when I knew I needed to, but I pushed through it. So again, I know that from experience. And that was why I learned so much from my 10K is I knew there were signs and symptoms that I needed to rest more last week than I did because I'd been going for a long time. And so, that's both kind of examples are very similar. You just have to make the choice and know that things are temporary and what's your plan when you're done.
Yes, exactly. All right. And then this was a really popular episode, Debunking Wellness Myths, part 1, because we're going to do this again because there's so many out there. What you need to know. And we basically each came up with a handful of 3, I think, of myths that are out there that are not true. It's a great episode if you guys go back and listen to it, and we will do it again. So we'd love to hear yours. But what did you have questions from that?
No questions, but I just want to highlight, we talked about cold plunges and I shared my experience with cold plunging and why I do it. For me, I do it because cold water has always been like my biggest fear, something that I truly hate. And so just to overcome that hatred of cold water, that's why I started cold plunging from November to February. And then the water started getting warmer. 50 degrees started feeling warm to me. 55 felt really warm. And when it got back up to 60 in our outdoor pool, I'm like, this is like not a cold plunge anymore. So I took about a month and a half to 2 months off. And now my facility at Lifetime Fitness in Woodstock, Georgia, they turned one of the hot tubs into a cold plunge.
Ours just did that too.
And it's 50-ish, 50 to 55. And it's really brutal. Like, oh my God, I got used to that as not being so cold. And now it's excruciatingly cold, but I'm doing it. And I'm doing it. Are there benefits, to reduce inflammation, the health benefits? I mean, there's so much information out there about yes and no. You got to decide for yourself what you believe and what's most beneficial for you.
Yeah.
So that was a highlight. And then we talked about, do carbohydrates make you fat? And just other hot topics that people ask us about all the time.
Yeah. So I like that. I have more to say about the cold plunge, but we got to move on. Mindfulness in media, taking a break from social media. Did you get any questions afterwards? Questions or comments about that?
Media break. Yes. This is a good one. So again, I talked about my experience with kind of going off the grid with my husband for a few days, and how part of the cabin we stayed at was you put your cell phones in a box and you lock it up. We didn't go that far, but I barely looked. Less than 30 minutes a day I was on social media. It was mostly to post all my great pictures that I took on our hikes together. So the question I have, again, it's based on athletes. I thought this was a great one. Have you ever deleted your Strava or Instagram account temporarily, and or like Facebook or other social media outlets? Almost deleting your Strava account is almost like, do you train without a watch or a Garmin? And did it change how you felt about training? So again, I'm old school. Back in the day when I started 33 years ago in the multi-sport world, there wasn't anything more than a Timex chrono watch. And so I would take my watch more just for the time of day. Like if I left the house at 2 and I got home by 5, I was out for 3 hours, you know.
Right.
Sometimes I'd hit the chrono to know the exact amount of time, because in that 3 hours, you obviously stop, you take breaks, go to the bathroom, refuel, gas station, stuff like that. But it wasn't like a necessity for me to know the exact amount of time I was on my bike or the exact amount of distance or anything like that, because that wasn't even an option to even know that that was something important to track. And so, talking about Strava, it's just a place where people can connect their Garmin watches, GPS devices, and it downloads into this app called Strava, and people can watch what you're doing. And there's various segments that you can get King and Queen of the Mountain, or you can get PRs with. And I had a Strava account. I think I created it in like 2013, and I didn't even know I had it. And then I started using it in 2020 because I was part of this virtual team competition that we were tracking our miles to get to travel across the United States virtually. That's when COVID happened. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to use the Strava account. Oh my God, this is stupid. Anyways, it kind of got me started in Strava, but I don't need it. I don't need it at all. I like having my Garmin, but I also know I know my time, I know my distance. I don't really need it. I'm fine without going without GPS devices. And I'm fine without tracking metrics for myself. I think it's a good thing to do. And have I deleted Instagram, Facebook, or anything? No, I haven't. But I also have scheduled times of days that I do scroll. And then there's times of days where it's not my scheduled time of day to scroll. So I don't. I get other things done.
Right. Awesome. All right. Relationship wellness, the key to longevity and happiness. So we talked a lot about relationships, whether it was significant other, and then all the other relationships we have, parents, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, friendships, and how they just enhance our lives. And did you have any questions? My big thing about relationships and connectedness is this podcast has had a lot of people reaching out to me and connecting. So to me, that's that's exactly what we talk about on the podcast, is that connection and, just communicating with each other. And I've been really working on communication with my daughter because she doesn't understand yet what effective communication is. And she just sees everything in black and white, and she just assumes things a lot. So even today, just joking around, we're at the ranch where I coach, and she hangs out in the tennis office. There's like 8 billion tennis balls. So she was bringing a bunch of tennis balls into a pile where she was hanging out. And the tennis coach walked by and he goes, "You stealing my tennis balls?" And she started crying because she thought he was mad that she was stealing his tennis balls. And she's like, "I wasn't stealing them." And I'm like, "I know, he was joking." And she was like, "Well, it wasn't funny." And I go, "Well, it wasn't funny to you because you took it differently." So I'm teaching her. We've been really working on this the last few weeks to ask more questions. So instead of just started crying, maybe should have been like, "Oh, what did you mean by that?" And maybe he would have been like, "Oh, I was just joking. I was just trying to be funny." And then she could say, "Well, it wasn't really funny to me." And then he could say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way." And she's like, "That's okay." And then it would have been dissolved.
Yeah. And I think you said it right there. An effective way to communicate is to ask questions and understand the proper meaning, and understanding the context of the conversations and the context of where someone's coming from the way they're communicating with you.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. That would solve a lot of world problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we went to self-love. The key to better health, self-love. And again, I think we talk about this in every episode
I do too.
is is be selfish, take care of yourself. You cannot help anybody else if you are not there to help.
Yeah, and I think again from the coach athlete standpoint, some people may think that you're selfish because you train for 4 hours a day when you have a family. But a lot of athletes who train for 4 hours a day, they make it happen at like 4 in the morning when their family's sleeping.
Yeah.
And usually if you're feeling selfish because of training, then you haven't communicated correctly with your significant others that are making you feel selfish. And once you get the communication going, saying, okay, this is what I need to know to do for the next 2 months leading up to my race, and then I have more time for the family stuff, as long as everyone's on board with you training a certain volume or whatever you're doing, whether it's training or not, the communication is really important. If you're feeling selfish, because only you can feel selfish. No one can make you feel selfish. It's up to you to
Yeah.
feel selfish or not selfish.
Yeah,
Self-care.
and somebody can try to make you feel selfish, but if you're not, if you don't believe you are, like I've had people behind my back that I found out about called me selfish mother for continuing to race while I had a newborn.
Hmm.
A selfish mother for putting my kid in kid care so I could go to the gym. Some people might think it's even, I'm next week, my daughter's going to camp for the whole summer. I'm not an overnight camp for the whole summer. Although I used to work at a camp like that.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because it was an 8-week camp and the parents came, they had parents stay for 1 day after 4 weeks. So these kids, I worked at this camp in upstate New York. The parents drop off their kids. 4 weeks later, the parents come for 1 day. And then 4 weeks later, they come and pick up their kids.
Hmm.
And when I was working there, I was like, oh my gosh, these parents are so horrible. This was before I was a mom, of course. They just dump their kids at this summer camp all summer. But then I'm like, the parents probably both work full time. And what an amazing experience that these kids get. It was $10,000 per kid for the summer. And these parents had like 3 or 4 kids there. So these parents were like giving these kids such an amazing experience because at home, they would just be at home alone all day.
Yeah, that was a good
So,
example.
so yeah, so I was at first, I'm like, well, I can bring Cora to all my things. So I shouldn't, put her in summer camp. But then people are like, she's going to have so much more fun at summer camp than to be dragged around every day for the whole summer. And it's going to be so less stress on me. So is it selfish? Yes, but we're both benefiting from her being at summer camp all summer.
Right.
So self-love. Fueling for wellness, a conversation on eating disorders.
This was one of my favorite episodes because I did my master's thesis on eating training and prevalence of disordered eating among triathletes. And this was back in 1999. So really triathlon was still super new and just no one really talked about disordered eating. No one really knew what it was, but it's something that Kirsten and I have both experienced personally. So it was just a nice conversation that we got to share. And I had an athlete reach out to me on Facebook who I knew back when I lived in Colorado. I still know her, obviously, but she had told me about how relatable I was for her daughter. She's like, oh my God,
Mm.
everything you said, my daughter can relate. I've never heard anyone say it quite like that, of sharing our experiences. So it felt really good that one episode helped at least that one person.
And to help a younger woman, a younger girl.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, honestly, when I found out I was having a girl, like my first thing is like, I hope she doesn't have an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was literally one of my first thoughts, just because I know so many women who struggle with body image and eating disorder. And so if us bringing it out into the light can help, like Wendy said, even one person, especially a younger person, it was so worth it.
Right. And I just want to ask you a question. How do you, I know we're spending more time on, but this is an important topic.
Yes.
How would you how do you express to someone, like your friend came to you today and said, so-and-so, I think has an eating disorder. What do I do?
What would I do?
What would you do to tell that person how to approach their friend who they think has an eating disorder?
It depends on how old they are. So if they're like younger, like I would say like high school or younger, I would kind of maybe keep an eye on them, maybe ask them questions like, you know, about food, or like if they're, or I'd ask the person who came to me and said that, I would say, why do you think that your friend has an eating disorder? And if they're like, oh, because I see her, you know, running to the bathroom after every meal, or she exercises and eats a can of peas for the entire day, or you know, if she has some specific things, if the child is, if they're younger, I would definitely reach out to their parents, just because I feel like
That's good. Yeah.
because I feel like, and not like I'm not going to tattle on her. I don't want to break any like I don't want anyone to think that I'm breaking any sort of confidentiality, or telling on them or talking behind their back. But I think that an awareness from the parents, then the parents can keep an eye on it. Because one of the things, so eating disorders, I'm also super afraid of sexual assault on my daughter. Like I'm like, it terrifies me. So if somebody came to me and they're like, hey, your daughter was saying that my daughter and your daughter are friends, and my daughter said that your daughter said that Jimmy was like kept touching her butt. I would want to be aware of that so that I can kind of pay attention and formulate some questions so that there's some open communication between me and Cora to see what was really going on.
Yeah, I like that. And for me, going back to the eating disorders from adults and like athletes I've coached, I know athletes I've coached for, 25 plus years. I've had athletes with disordered eating. I've experienced it. I know the signs and symptoms, preoccupation with food type of stuff. Leading by example, encouraging them to eat before a 5-hour training session, 3-hour training session, 1-hour training session, eat something before a morning workout, encourage them to fuel during and encourage them to fuel after. And just giving examples of what I do to encourage them to try to do what I do, because I'm a successful endurance athlete and they want to be a successful endurance athlete like me. And
Right.
so, leading by example, trying to open up that communication that they can share with you their struggles if they're having one. That's been very effective with me. A lot of athletes have been able to share their struggles with me because they know I share my struggles with them. And so that's been very effective.
Yeah, I just recently told one of my athletes, we were talking about food fueling during racing, and I used to like try to maybe 100 calories per hour, because I was trying. I didn't want my training day to be a waste. And in my mind, back in the days, a waste meant I took in as many calories as I lost, because if I equaled out my calories in, calories out, that would be a net zero.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't lose any weight.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't gain any weight, but all I wanted to do was work out more than I ate. So if
Right.
I was doing a 2-hour training session or 2-hour race, even a race, I was like, okay, just take in like 1 bottle of Gatorade.
Uh-huh.
That's 100 calories an hour. And then it slowly, as I wanted to perform better, I started adding more. And even last year, when I went up to 300 calories an hour for a 70.3, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to gain so much weight. And this year, I just finished my last race at 400 calories an hour. And I felt amazing the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taking in more calories than I used to take in a whole half Ironman each hour. So yeah, leading by example is great. All right. Redefining success, a personal journey. We actually talked about this. Our whole wellness wins were about redefining success.
Yeah.
Did you have any additional questions?
I did not.
All right. Failing forward, turning setbacks into strength. Same thing. We just at the one before, we focused on successes, and this we focused on failure, but redefining them as successes.
Right. Turning failures into learning opportunities. Failure, your first attempt. No, fail, your first attempt in learning.
Yes.
That was
First
like
attempt
really
in learning.
highlighted about that one.
Yes. The next one was simplifying wellness, because I had a friend that said, I know you guys are trying to simplify everything, but they're not simplified enough. So we really broke it down.
Right. And I think if we had to simplify wellness in 3 daily habits, number 1, make sure you're prioritizing sleep. Everyone's amount of sleep is different, but the general rule is try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, either by going to bed early or waking up later, changing your schedule so you can really aim for that 7 to 8 hours of sleep. eating whole food nutrition, trying to eat less of processed foods, where you don't have to eliminate processed foods, but eat less of it and just be really mindful of your eating habits. And then, just developing really solid communicative, ask question type relationships.
I love that. So there it is, you guys. Do those 3 things every single day and just stay consistent with those and just watch things happen. I 100% agree. The next episode was the athlete's journey before, during, and after a big event, which we kind of touched on earlier. But did you have any other?
No, I think again, from just as we're coaches, this is one of my favorite episodes because we have so much experience to share of our athletic journeys before, during, and after events. So definitely tune into that one. And again, we kind of shared that the lessons learned, we can apply to other areas of our life, not just being an athlete.
Yes. And that's even though Wendy and I do talk about sports a lot and being triathletes and runners and swimmers and we're coaches, most of these lessons apply to every area of lives. And we talk about that in, I think, almost every podcast, relating it in one other way. This one was a good one. I love this one. Level up your personal growth, sharing our 40 plus years of coaching experience.
Gosh, I don't even remember that one.
So we just talked about our journey as coaches and athletes.
Coaches, yes.
And we did do a lot of listener questions on that one. But this one was, I think a lot of people related to it. This is one that I got a lot of feedback on as, thank you for sharing. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Well, again, we were young when we started. We have so much experience, and now we're in the masters athlete category, probably approaching grandmasters athlete category. And just kind of how we've adapted due to the aging process and what we've had to adapt to our training and wellness habits as we've aged.
Yeah. And I think that's really relatable because when I look at our demographic of people who watch our podcast, watch or listen to our podcast, it's 99% women. Shout out to those 3 men out there. And then it is primarily that age group is 45 to 55.
Yeah.
It's like hugely primarily, like 75% of our listeners are in our age category, which makes sense because that's who we're going to attract.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that that's really, that episode is really effective. And thank you for you guys saying that because that's why we're here. Embracing adventure, the path to personal growth.
That was a fun one because we shared our personal adventures and why we need these adventures, epic challenges for our mental and physical well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like this one also because it gave people, people have told me they thought about, oh, maybe I will try that. Or, oh yeah, I did want to do an adventure. Maybe I'll think about something fun or a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I just started I used to be really big into jump roping back 25 years ago. I even made a jump rope exercise video and it's on YouTube. Don't go find it. And I started jump roping 4 days ago and I hadn't picked up a jump rope in like minimum 10 years. And I was like, holy cow, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Like cardiovascularly, I think 30 seconds in, I was already out of breath. And I swear I'm a good athlete, but I was like, you know what? This was fun. I suck at it. I used to be really good at it. I'm going to do this every day. So the next day I did, and I was doing some, double unders, some tricks, just like jumping a little bit. So I did it 3 days in a row and I'm like, great. Now it's a streak. So today I'll do it. I did it. Monday was my first day. Today's Thursday. So I'll do it this evening when I have time to get a little workout in. But I just thought that's adventurous, right? I'm going to jump rope streak. If anybody wants to join me on my jump rope streak, all you need is a jump rope.
Right. And I feel like I'm back in my cold plunge streak, even though I'm not like diving in the pool and staying in there for any excessive amount of time. I'm getting in the lifetime cold plunge again. And I decided, all right, since day one, since we opened it, my goal is to get in, even if it's just waist deep. My goal is to get in every day to start a new streak.
We'll check in 6 months on your cold plunge and my jump rope streak.
Awesome.
This is a good one. And we actually kind of touched on this already today. Understanding burnout.
That was a good one because we talked about signs and symptoms of burnout. And I think we might have touched on overtraining because that's one of the questions I have.
Okay.
And this we can dive into the podcast. If I'm still hitting all my workouts but feel mentally exhausted, is that overtraining and burnout? And I'm going to say if you're mentally starting to feel exhausted, I had an athlete just tell me last night she's starting to feel anxiety and she doesn't want to do her workouts and she's a week and a half away from her goal race. She's like, is that normal? And so again, through the series of questions I had from her about is she feeling overwhelmed and anxious and just tired and she doesn't want to work out, like what's going on? We ended up figuring out it's a completely different issue, but we figured it out this morning. So the anxiety was short lived and it had nothing to do with the workouts. It had to do with something else, but she was just feeling it in all aspects of life. If you're feeling mentally drained, I'm going to say that's more burnout. If you're feeling more physically drained, that's more of overtraining. Your training load, volume, or intensity, or both is too much, and you're on the verge of overtraining. You're not sleeping well, even though you're going to bed at 9 and you have all day to sleep the next day, but you're awake and your mind is going. That's a sign of overtraining. Not having an appetite is a sign of overtraining. High heart rate variability, just high heart rate, high resting heart rate in general is a sign of overtraining. Those are three key things. But mentally, burnout could be, a friend of mine, her dog just passed away, and so she may be not feeling too much energy to do her workouts the next few days. That's more like, okay, I'm burned out a little bit. I need to take a break. I need to reel myself in. I need to process the grief I'm going through from my pet or a loved one. And if it's mental, you mentally don't want to do something that's just more, could be burnout. It could be, it's October, it's the end of your season, you're burned out. You've just been training for 6 months, take a break.
Yeah, when you mentioned the question, my first thought was it has nothing to do with training because the way that it was worded was mentally and so to me that would be like look at all the other things in your life
Mm-hmm.
because they might be the things that are stressing you out and your workout is the one thing actually keeping you focused. And then the second thing I thought of is when you said she was a week and a half out from her event. To me, if that was happening to me or one of my athletes, I would say, you know what? Let's start tapering. Let's back off. We're really close to your event.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling all this. Maybe it's time to, if you were going to do, I don't know what the event is, but if it was a short, maybe you were doing a week taper and it's 10 days out, maybe it's time to just start tapering now.
Right. Because anything you do 10 days before a race is not, you need to rest because anything high intensity, high load is going to negatively impact your race in 10 days. You want to cut that volume, keep a little bit of intensity. You want to enter that event fresh, energetic, not fatigued.
Did you write that down for the peach tree?
I got to, yeah.
You're like, yes. Um, then we went on to talk about veganism, which was probably one of my favorites because I'm really passionate about it. And I get 8 million questions about veganism every day. I said on the onset, I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow who has a lot of questions about being a vegan athlete. And I'm going to keep track of these questions and we can share them when our next vegan podcast. But yeah, that's the one I get the most questions about. But again, we could spend a whole nother podcast on it.
Right. What I just want to say is, again, we talked about where do vegans get their protein. That's probably the most common question. And we just talked about the reason I went vegan, the reason Kirsten went vegan. I spent 20 minutes with my kids this morning. They were asking me, I don't remember why it was brought. Oh, one of my athletes said, what should I have for breakfast? And I'm like, what do you like to eat for breakfast? What did you have for breakfast yesterday? Blah, 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 blah. She was just in a mental funk. She was having a bad day. So she thought it was nutritional. So I said, eat eggs. They're really high in protein. And everyone's like, you eat eggs? I go, no, but they're really high in protein. And I did eat eggs as a recovery, from my patella surgery. So I did lose my vegan lifestyle for a year and then I went back to it. Because I was eating plant-based protein for recovery. My surgeon told me to, and I'm like, shit, I want to recover. So I'll do it, mostly eggs. But anyways, a great topic. Definitely. If you're considering going vegan or if you have questions, go listen to that episode.
Yes. And this is really exciting to me. So on my website, when people sign up for my swim team, it's also my coaching website. And I had one of the parents, a dad of one of the kids I coach, the other day after practice, he was like, hey, at some point when things settle down a little bit, my wife and I want to get on your calendar for your vegan coaching. I saw it on your website. And I was like, yes, somebody wants, and they're not vegan, but they want to eat more plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, Wendy and I said, we're both into it for the animals, even if that's not how Wendy started for health, but now she's into the animals. And so if one person is going to eat fewer animals, it's going to help save the animals. All right. Quotes we love.
Again, we shared some information. I'd like athletes or non-athletes, anyone go back to that one for motivation. I think some highlighted quotes for me is always do what you love what you do, because that can apply to anything in life. And if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And I think that applies to a lot of people trying to gain or lose weight. If you're always trying to do the same thing to lose or gain weight, you're always going to be where you're at. You got to try something new with diet, exercise, nutrition, everything. So those are my two favorite ones I use a lot.
Yeah, I have a girl on my swim team. She's 14 or she's 15 this year. And she's like, she hasn't swam since last year. She took the whole off season off, and she was like, started swimming, and her shoulders were bothering her last year, and her shoulders started bothering her. And she was like, I don't know why my shoulders are still bothering me. It's been a year. And I said, well, what have you done in the year to make it so your shoulders aren't going to bother you when you swim? And she was like, nothing. And I was like, well, then you can't expect them to be all better if you haven't done anything to make them better.
Yes, exactly.
So
that's funny.
Mindset matters. How to prepare for a big event.
Again, most of our topic of conversation was sports, but it could be job related. It could be
You talked a lot about your you talked a lot about presentations and your thesis and
my thesis. Yeah. How to prepare for a big event. And someone told me, when I was presenting that thesis, you're the expert. I'm like, I really am in this crowd right now with all my advisors, because my main advisor left a couple months before I defended. So I got my stats guy to be the head of my committee. He didn't know anything about eating disorders in triathletes. So I really was the expert, and that was really fun. That really reframed my mindset going into that presentation. When I started coaching coaching adults as a grad student at CSU, Colorado State University, everyone's like, well, you're the expert at swimming. I'm like, yeah, I am. So what am I scared of? And that I would lose those fears when you're the expert. So that was a really good conversation, because I find myself talking about the mindset, changing your mindset, and reframing daily to everyone in my life right now.
Right. Well, and that just reminded me, I talk about like plant-based coaching and helping people eat more plant-based and in becoming vegan if that's what they want to become. And I'm still learning every single day. I only learned this year, last year I learned that that conversational hearts have gelatin in them. I didn't know that till 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Because when I was a kid and I ate them, candy wasn't required to have any labeling. So I didn't know what was in them.
Right. I remember.
If I would have known they're gelatin, I wouldn't have eaten them. I didn't eat marshmallows as a kid.
When I learned that gelatin was in marshmallows, that was disgusting to me, because I didn't know either. That was quite a few years ago. But yeah, gelatin I didn't know was a thing.
Yeah.
A meat-based product.
Yeah. I knew that as a kid, but I didn't know like so many things. I just didn't eat Jell-O and I didn't eat marshmallows. But I didn't know, like, if you look at like Starburst have gelatin in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many things. And so like the conversational hearts, I just learned that 2 years ago. So if I was waiting until I knew everything about being vegan before I started helping others become vegan, I would never do it. So It's that same thing you just said. Like, I'm not an expert. I also just learned that a confectioner's glaze is most like, there is some vegan forms of confectioner's glaze that vegan specific products use, but most confectioner's glaze, which is what makes candy shiny, like sprinkles, confectioner's glaze is made up of these beetles that have really shiny shells, and they're all crunched up and then colored. And that's confectioner's glaze. Okay. I know. So I just learned that like a couple of years ago. So if I would have waited until I knew everything about being vegan before I could teach someone to be vegan, then I would never be the expert, but I know more than the people I'm helping.
Okay, here's something to think about. And again, I know we're running long on this podcast, but since we're talking about it, so we have a garden, and my husband was spraying fertilizer, but it was fish. It was a liquid form of fish fertilizer, and I'm like, okay, now our plants aren't going to be vegan.
Yeah.
And
Because
then
now we're
he
gonna.
said, probably most plants aren't vegan if you don't know what's in the soil
Right.
that they're planted in. So I'm like, does that make something not vegan if a plant is growing and it has bugs or whatever is in the soil? Does that make it
Right.
not vegan? And I'm like, oh, I should ask Kirsten.
So I would say there's and most vegans would agree. There's there's levels of vegan. So people like joke around and they're like, I'm a level 10 vegan. Um, to me, you do the best you can with the knowledge you have and the resources you have, and you try to harm as few living things as possible. Is it realistic to never touch, or like if you're at your friend, if your friend's picking you up to go somewhere and they have leather seats, are you gonna be like, never mind, I'll walk? Or like when you call an Uber, are you like, you have to wait for the seventh Uber because the first six had leather seats? So I was listening to this vegan that somebody had asked him, do you feed your cat vegan? Because I guess cats are like super carnivorous,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is. Because I do feed my dogs vegan dog food and vegan treats. And if they were by the dumpster for a walk and they eat a chicken bone and I didn't see it, I'm like, get that out of your mouth. But like, they're my dogs, right? But I buy vegan dog food. So this guy said that he doesn't want to be the person who contributes to more cat food being made. So he buys only cat food that somebody else is reselling, like online. Like he'll go to Facebook Marketplace or
Mm.
eBay. And if people had already bought the cat food and maybe their cat died and now they're selling their cat food, that's how he buys it, so that he's not buying retail and contributing to more needed cat food.
Mm.
He feeds his cat food regular cat food, but he buys it all like secondhand.
Oh, that's neat.
I know. I thought that, and I just like heard this like 3 days ago. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, that's really neat. So I would say in anything in life, you guys, do the best you can with what you have to work with in the moment. And that might change day to day. That's some good advice.
That was a great answer. Thank you. I like that.
Oh no, my battery is running low. What? Oh, my good thing that came up, or this whole podcast would be it would stop. Hold on. Okay. My laptop got unplugged. All right. We have two more. Wellness through change, navigating life's transitions.
So again, this is one of our most recent podcasts. We just talked about transitioning from the seasons, like from our spring schedule into our summer schedule. Even though it's still spring, we have similar schedules that are changing. We talked about, just transitions of relationships, divorces, transitioning from me moving to Colorado to me moving to Georgia. And then I think I mentioned job transition. So a lot of different transitions, and we just talked about our experiences and how we.
Yeah, and we actually like mentioned we do have an after party little segment that we do that we post in our personal group. So if you want to be a part of that, just let me or Wendy know. And it just kind of talks about things in a little more depth, or if we forgot to mention something. And we did in our after party that week talk about parenting.
Mhm.
Oh wait, no, that was last week. That was a different one. The next topic, we talk about parenting, and I think that's really important. Parenting is also a huge transition when you don't have any kids. I was doing the rowing machine the other day, and I used to do the rowing machine every single day. Wendy and I even had a huge rowing challenge. And my friend that I was doing the rowing machine with, she was like, she's a client I coach, but we've become friends. And I was coaching her. I was doing personal training with her. And she was like, do you ever do the rower? I really like it. And I was like, oh, let's go do the rowing machine. And I was doing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, before I had Cora, I did this every day. I rowed every day for every day for 15 minutes, every day. I also was training 32 hours a week because I had nothing else going on in my life besides working and training. And now I have a child that's a lot different. I haven't rode since she was born.
I haven't rode since our
Our last challenge.
marathon challenge because it just hurts my butt so much. It's so
Yeah.
unbearable. It's so unbearable. Which wasn't part of my wellness joy at all. I'm
Yeah.
glad I did it once. I had an athlete that I used to coach from Istanbul, Turkey. He, for some reason, not able to run, like do multi-sport anymore, but he likes to row, and he liked to row before. And he just shared with me how inspiring I am to him because he learned about all my challenges when I used to go do camps in Turkey. And so he did a row marathon. He rowed 26.2 miles on his rowing in like a little over 3 hours. And he shared it on Facebook or shared it on Instagram, and I reshared it because I'm like, oh my God, this guy did this because of me in my
You're
challenge.
like, I hate rowing
No,
now.
he can't do a marathon on the treadmill or a marathon on
Right.
the track like we could, but he did a marathon on the rowing machine, which I thought was fantastic.
Right. That's awesome. All right. And then finally, our last week um was on feeling we called it a wellness check-in, overwhelmed, tired, and still moving forward. And we talked about just some struggles that we're having. We did talk about the imposter syndrome. We talked about some of the struggles that our athletes and the people we coach are coming to us with, and how we've dealt with those issues in our own lives.
Yeah, I mean, one question I have about imposter syndrome, again, it's from an athlete that I know. They qualified for a world championship race. So they qualified for the 70.3 world championship for 2020 for
Sick.
next year. And they don't feel like they belong. How do I shake that feeling? And again, just if for those who don't know, 70.3, it's a half Ironman. It used to be a little bit more competitive on how you qualified. I think it started in Claremont, Florida. I remember I did one in Las Vegas in 2011. I did one in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It used to be a lot more competitive to compete. And now they change locations around the world. It's not just within the United States. So it costs more. So people who qualify can't always go. They can't always afford it or budget to go. So what's called a roll down, that, if top three automatically qualify and they don't want the slot, then it rolls down to fourth, fifth, sixth. Sometimes you can get 30th, 40th, or 50th place in your age group and get what's called a roll down slot because the people in front of you who finished faster than you don't want the slot. So then you kind of could feel like, I wasn't top three. Do I really deserve to go? And of course you deserve to go. Why not? You showed up, you raced, you finished the race, you went to the roll down, you really want to go. You can afford to go. You should go. It's definitely an experience not to pass up if you really want to go.
Yeah. I actually, for the last time I went to Kona, I think 3 or 4 of my athletes were there racing with me.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them were maybe like 14th, 15th, 20th in their age group in the
Mm-hmm.
qualifying race. And so they felt that, and they're like, should I go? Like, do I deserve to go? Should I go? And I said, absolutely go, because it's going to be a phenomenal experience. And it's still the top people in the sport. They
Mm-hmm.
just had more spots open. So more people than were used to going were going.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them reached out to me after Ironman just changed um, back to going everyone to Kona. And she was one of the ones that did not place high and ended up getting a slot after the fact. Like, they sent an email to a group of people saying we still have some spots open. And she's like, am I allowed to go? I'm like, go. So after they did the new rule, she sent me a message and she was like, I am so glad I went, because I'm probably not going to be able to qualify again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, see, I told you, good thing, do
Yeah.
it.
And she went and she finished.
She went and she finished, and she had an amazing day.
And of course, you finished, you deserve to go. You're part of the people that finished that thing.
Yeah, 100%. So we need to wrap up, but I just want to know what you are most excited about for this upcoming week.
I'm kind of excited to kind of this first week, official week of early morning. Well, not early morning, but morning practices is out of the way. So now I have a better handle on my schedule,
Yes,
which
yes.
is a huge thing. I'm coaching a swim meet, and then I have another upcoming 10K that I'm excited to do and see how I do, see if my training's working, see if my rest works this time. So, yeah, I mean, I'm in a good spot. I'm not feeling anxious, overwhelmed. I'm in a good place.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited about having this week done. And next week will be still a transition for me because Cora will start camp. So I have to get her to camp and pick her up. But I feel like once that first week, the whole summer is going to go like exactly like next week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited. But I'm going to California this weekend. I get my niece is graduating from high school. She's my youngest niece and she's graduating from high school. So I'm going to California. I'm only going for 2 days. So I'm flying. It'll be a quick out and back, but I'm really excited to go see my family.
That sounds great.
So you guys are awesome. Thanks for sticking with us today. Let us know if you got value out of this, what else you want us to talk about. If there's things you want us to go more into depth. I know today we kind of scratched the surface, but if this is your first time you're listening to us, we scratch the surface, but in each podcast, we go really deep into everything we talked about.
It was a great one.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here.
Make it a great day.
All right. Bye. Thank you for listening to Wellness Made Easy with Wendy and Kirsten.
If you want to learn more about us or anything we talked about today, check out the links in our show notes.
We would love to know what you think of our podcast and what you want more of. So drop us a comment, send us a message, and help us out by leaving us a rating and a review.
And don't forget to let us know your wellness win for this week.
Thanks for listening.
Make it a great day.